PG&E's monopoly territory is home to 17 million people.
Families already struggle to pay their bills.
PG&E was convicted of 91 felonies.
Really? I mean, what's next?
Greybeard Talks Solar. He is SolarWise.
Welcome to the Greybeard Talks Solar YouTube channel. I'm so grateful, glad you're here. Hoping to give you some great information today about off-grid solar systems, what you didn't know about off-grid. And so please, if you find this information valuable, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit that follow button because there's going to be a lot more information to come from the Greybeard Talks Solar YouTube channel. So let's just jump into it today. So I get a lot of questions throughout the year about off-grid solar systems. And what I found is a lot of homeowners don't really understand the complexity, the challenge, and the scope of work that's involved in an off-grid solar system. So let me define what I mean by that. Effectively, what you're going to do is source all of your energy from solar. Off-grid means that you're not connected to the utility or not using the utility as a primary source for your energy consumption. So best example to visualize is somebody that's got some sort of property up in the mountains that does not have any connection to a utility, yet they need power. And so off-grid systems mean we're going to drive all of the energy from the sun to the house, and there is no other source to draw from. Now, in residential use, I get a lot of people that have a strong conviction to not want to be connected to the utility, and I totally understand why. PG&E Energy, Edison Energy, San Diego Gas and Electric Energy, the three big utilities in California, some of the most expensive energy in all of the nation. The only place in America where you've got more expensive energy is in Hawaii. So I understand wanting to get disconnected from the utility. But let me give you a couple of different points to think about. When you source all of your energy from the sun versus having a utility connection, it brings about some complexities that a lot of people don't realize. So let me give you an example. With an off-grid system versus a grid-tied solar system. So if you have grid-tied solar, it means that you're going to source a majority of your energy, not all of it, but a majority of your energy from solar and then supplement from the utility. The example I like to give is it's the relationship between a checking account and a savings account. You know, checking account is primary, the bill paying account. That's where the money comes out of. And the only time you ever touch the savings is if you overdraw the checking. So with grid-tied solar, the primary source of the energy is solar. The only time you ever use utility energy or the energy from PG&E, Edison, or San Diego Gas and Electric, whoever your utility is if you exceed the energy production from solar and demand is great, you need to source it from someplace else. Only two ways to get energy into your home, either solar energy or utility energy, right? So in that example, what people don't really necessarily understand is that when you're going to source a majority of your energy from only the sun, let's talk about the different seasons and how that affects the equation. So in summertime, obviously solar is the most vibrant, the most productive, the most beneficial to homeowners because effectively, given the time of the sun in the sky, it's like a 16-hour opportunity for you to draw as much energy as possible throughout that day. Now, if we just take sun in the sky that time and then switch to now winter, in the winter season, you're talking about maybe only 8 hours of sun exposure, and the sun is much lower in the southern sky, so it's not as intense. When it's directly overhead, a lot more capacity, a lot more ability to generate energy. When it's much lower in the southern sky, then it's less effective at doing the same. So, for example, winter energy can be 35 to 40% of what summer energy production is. Now, with off-grid systems, this creates a particular challenge because you need energy 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, right? Like when you're living in a remote situation or an off-grid situation in the wintertime, you're still going to need 24 hours of energy, even though you've got this limited, the lowest amount of sun exposure throughout the whole year in the wintertime. So I say to people all the time, here's the one thing you probably didn't know about off-grid systems. Effectively, off-grid systems, from the number of panels you need, are often twice as big as grid-tied systems because you still need to produce 24 hours of energy when you only have 6 hours of vibrant sun exposure. So you need more panels to capture more energy to then store in batteries, which I'll get to batteries in just a minute. So the big revelation here, the big thought to consider is that if you're grid tied, it basically means that you need maybe half as many panels as an off-grid system. So you could deduce from this example that off-grid systems are meaningfully more expensive than grid-tied systems because effectively you're doubling the size of the energy load that you need to drive to make it work correctly. Which brings me now to a secondary concern. Let's talk about battery storage. In residential solar today, there's two different types of batteries that are available. There's something called a cost savings battery, which just stores the surplus energy that your solar system creates throughout the day to then drive that energy into your home in the evening time. So the primary purpose of them is storing the surplus or excess energy, because if you send that energy to the utility, currently in California under NEM 3, Net Energy Metering 3.0 rules, if you send that energy to the utility, you're only going to receive compensation back for about 25% of what you send to the utility. Yet if you store it in your own batteries, send 10 watts into the batteries, I can take 10 watts of energy out of the batteries and there's no degradation, no loss. Nobody's confiscating any of my energy. So that's a cost savings battery. And then there's also a type of battery that's cost savings plus backup capability. So these batteries are effectively the same as the other, but they're just hardwired into your main service panel to back up strategic breakers. They need a combiner box. They need additional equipment to be able to do so. But to do a backup battery is maybe $6, $7, $8,000, depending on the installer, more expensive than the cost savings version of them. All right. So once again, grid-tied solar, I'm going to source a majority of my energy, not all of it, but a majority of my energy from solar and then supplement from the utility. With these types of systems, you might only need 2 or 3 of the cost savings batteries, which are far cheaper, less expensive, to be able to just store the surplus energy, especially if you're in an urban area or suburban area where you don't really suffer power loss very frequently. That's a strategic advantage to you because it lessens the overall cost of the solar system because you can choose a battery that doesn't have to provide backup power to the house. Now, contrast that with an off-grid system. Everything needs to be backed up. All circuits of your house need to be backed up. So you need the more expensive version of the backup batteries, and in addition to that, you need more of them. Very similar to the statement I'd made before with off-grid systems, you need to kind of double the size versus a grid-tied. You need to double the battery count as well, because again, using that illustration of the wintertime usage, you need to take 6-7 hours of maximum sun exposure and be able to store energy in those batteries to last you for 24 hours a day, and notwithstanding inclement weather, storms, things that come through, overcast skies. So again, you need that battery storage to be able to store whatever energy is available when you can capture it, to store as much as possible, because you need that throughout the day because there is no fallback. There is no savings account to fall back on from the utility where you can draw energy from them, right? So let me give you an example of where off-grid systems, I think, for most folks, make the most sense. Okay, I'll give you an example because it's just a recent conversation I remember having with a homeowner about 3 weeks ago. So this particular gentleman was interested in doing an off-grid system because the utility, in this case PG&E, did not have access to energy. There was no energy, no utility pole close to his property. It's about 3/4 of a mile away from the local or the nearest, can't get the words out of my mouth today, from the nearest place where PG&E could have access or bring access in. So PG&E had went out there, did a property tour, walked the property, and basically got back to him and said that it was going to cost him $220,000 to bring power to his property. And then he has the privilege and the honor of probably paying somewhere in the neighborhood of $700, $800, $900 a month based on his energy use or demand for said PG&E energy. So imagine $220,000 to bring energy into the property, and then $700, $800 a month in utility expense after the fact. So he wanted to talk to me about an off-grid system. Now, again, given the size of the energy needs that he had and how big the system was, this was going to end up being a very expensive system. I think it ended up being 75 panels. I think we went with 4 or 5 batteries, all backup capable. You have to account for a generator too, because if let's say for inclement weather, you've got solar panels, you got the battery, but if you don't have enough juice in either of those, the only thing that you don't want to do without no power. So the other thing you fall back on is basically a generator. So anyway, looking at this particular gentleman's system, I think the quote that we had given him for install, ground mount, all that other stuff was like 160, 170 grand for this off-grid system. And he was elated at that because effectively it meant he didn't have to spend $220 with the utility, and he wasn't going to have a $700, $800 a month expense moving forward once that energy was brought into the house. So with solar, with a true off-grid situation where you don't have any power coming into a property, I think it's an excellent solution. For those of you out there that are watching this video that are already grid tied, meaning that you already have access to utility energy, it's already plumbed, it's already coming into the house, then I think that true off-grid systems aren't the best option for you. I know you don't like the utility. I know you don't like sending them money. I get it. I understand that. But you're going to double the size of the system, which is probably going to more than double the cost of the solar. And I think that you can achieve something far more beneficial without having to spend that much money. So stated differently, with solar today, with NEM 3 territory and NEM 3 compensation that you get, here's the thing. We can probably get you to a point where you can mitigate 95% of your utility exposure. We can get to a point where we can give you the energy that you need to offset your exposure to the utility by 95%. Okay. It's very difficult to get you 100% just because of how the compensation and reimbursement works for the excess energy that you send to the utility. But if we can get you 90% mitigation for, let's say, half the size of the system, half the batteries, and effectively maybe half the cost, isn't that maybe a better solution than going true off-grid with your system? So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this today. What you didn't know about off-grid systems. I hope that makes sense. I hope that I was able to impart some wisdom, some strategy here for you. Just understand we are a company that does do off-grid systems. We do ground mounts. We do off-grid. You know, as a solar broker, I try to affiliate with as many companies as I can to serve the needs of our constituents, our audience, our homeowners, and our business owners. We do commercial, we do residential, we do off-grid, we do ground mount, we do roof mount, we do all of those things. So I wanted to make sure that you have that information. So if this has been valuable, please, once again, smash the like, share, and subscribe button. Smash the follow. Make sure you're getting this content. We launch this video series every Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific. And so we'll continue to update that feed. And I really appreciate you watching the Greybeard Talks Solar YouTube channel, where a little wisdom goes a long way toward turning sunshine into some serious savings for you. Stay charged, stay informed, keep shining. And if this information was really valuable to you, please do one more thing. If you want to reach out to us directly and work with us on either off-grid, commercial, ground mount, residential solar, whatever it is, as a solar broker, we've gone through about 30 different companies to try to find 11 really good ones that we work with throughout the state of California. If you're interested in learning more or possibly exploring these options, you can do one thing. You can type YouTube on your phone. So take out your phone, text to the following number, 84503. If you text YouTube to this 5-digit number, 84503, my team will be in touch. We'll see if we can't help you to save some money versus the utility, and see if we can't help you to become a little bit more solar wise. So thanks for watching the channel. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to SolarWise, Greybeard Talks Solar. Please visit our website, solarwiseco.com, to learn more. And we will see you next time on SolarWise.